Hi, every pony. Today we have Bridle Gossip. Okay, let's get this started. The episode has clear skies and streets as Twilight and Spike walk into Ponyville. Pinky then pulls the 2-inch sugar cube corner for Luna knows what. The writers did a good job of giving the opening a creepy and intense feeling. I really felt this when the other 4 of the main 6 showed up while Twilight is talking to Pinkie Pie. It gives you the feeling that something's about to go down. The atmosphere is perfect for an intense scene, until the intro plays and ruins it. Opening back up, we have the ponies letting Twilight know all their superstitions and fears of the strange zebra standing out on the street. The 2 things she does that puts the ponies on edge is that she comes into town once a month, paws the ground, and then leaves, and the fact that she lives in the Everfree Forest. The writers really play up the dark and creepy factor of the Everfree Forest by making it sound exactly like our world. They don't really address the concept of how one would live in the Everfree Forest, why you might, and what it says about you. They simply state that because it's not natural, she's a freak. They push superstition to a whole new level this episode, and wait a second, didn't you all beat Nightmare Moon not 7 episodes ago? The second most powerful thing in the world, and you kicked her flank. And yet you're afraid of something that you can't prove has any power or reason to be afraid of? Twilight debunks all of their reasons for when she comes into town. Apple Bloom makes her speaking debut and is quickly established as a no-nonsense kid who doesn't believe everything her elders tell her. Her character in this episode should have had serious appeal because you can see how Applejack and her are similar. But this episode, Applejack tells lies based off her own fears. She goes from being extremely mature and grounded to jumping at shadows. In fact, it seems like they wrote her as Fluttershy and decided to run with it. The worst part is that she plays an overprotective older sister who thinks that her little sister can't do anything. Characters like that aren't liked, and you shouldn't take such a mature character and have her be so immature for an entire episode. Of course, they couldn't ruin only one character's actions. They had to make Rarity act exactly the way I was afraid she would. Her lines this episode are all of a prima donna's. She actually faints when she finds out that Zikora's stripes are natural. Her lines were unimaginative, but hey, so was this whole episode. Minus my favorite part of this episode, that is. Apple Bloom chooses to lose the nerve and courage she had and, instead of talking to her directly, stalks Zikora into the Everfree Forest, which apparently she isn't afraid of. Twilight tags along to make sure that Apple Bloom is okay, and they run into mysterious blue flowers. Zikora offers a warning which absolutely no pony remembers for more than 5 seconds. Applejack plays the biggest jerk by taking lead and telling off Zikora and then warns Twilight that some ponytails are true. Why? Because Twilight explained how a curse works to a T. Of course, she also acts like there's no way any pony could pull off a curse on someone as smart as her, but we'll get back to this. The old ponytails thing bothers me more, though, because the premise of the first 2 episodes was all about her taking an old mare's tail far too seriously. Twilight has weird fear dreams, which make no sense unless she had an unrecognized fear for what was going on. That could have been done better if they had put the work into making the dream sequence intense rather than silly as possible with one creepy moment. Of course, in the morning, Zikora has cursed every pony else. In her attempts to find a cure, she brushes off a book that Spike shows her, saying it's nonsense. This is the point where she goes from being a logical pony tackling superstition to a pony who simply rejects facts she doesn't like. Underlying moral of the episode, by the way, don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. The other ponies arrive as Harity, Flutterguy, Spitty Pie, Rainbow Crash, and Apple Teeny. They are so dubbed by Spike, who is not taking the scene seriously, and that is what the writers want the audience to do with the whole episode. Apple Bloom again acts with her sister's normal level of maturity and heads to talk to Zikora about fixing her friends. In the forest, we found out Apple Teeny had hidden her sister's mane, and we get an unnecessary role reversal of the 2. Apple Bloom already had been acting more mature this episode, and Applejack was projecting all of her feelings onto Apple Bloom. This is the weirdest part of this episode, by the way. Granny Smith would never be so terrified of the unusual. I mean, for pony's sake, you know what she does with Zap Apples, right? So what influenced Applejack to be scared to this level when she normally is just like Twilight and saying superstition is hooey? Of course, Apple Teeny gets picked up by Rainbow Crash and rides her in a way that makes no sense and just seems cruel on AJ's part. The other 4 arrive at Zikora's cottage separately, and observe tribal decor and Zecora making a brew. One out of place line, and even Twilight assumes it's apple bloom for dinner time. Of course, I haven't forgotten that Pinky says that Zecora stole her song. You didn't think I forgot about the pink mare this episode, did you? Pinky is a fearmonger this whole episode, and all she does is make every pony else more uncomfortable. What happened to giggle at the ghosties, Pinky? Another thing is that out of all the attempted humor this episode, Flutter Guy was the most amusing thing. And that's one of the few gags that they don't try to set up too much. The ponies confront Zecora and destroy her house in the meantime. Twilight and Applejack act out of character on a new level, going so far as to actually physically attack Zecora after wrecking her house. Then we get this big scene where everything is explained by Apple Bloom, and that book Spike picked out had the answer the whole time. Twilight says this, and it of course has a dual meaning in this episode, as does the moral. The moral is that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and that it isn't right to discriminate. The only pony who gets even partially redeemed is Twilight, because she says she's sorry and that she fell prey to superstition. The rest just enjoy a gag-filled bath without saying even one word to Zecora. No, I'm not kidding, by the way. Check it. In this episode, none of them say another word to Zecora except for Twilight and the spa attendants. I like the lesson, but its execution is so poor, and they treat the entire thing like one running gag, even seeming to meme the horror, doing it again here after we had seen it in Applebuck season. Finally, I get to do editor's notes. First, the poison joke and Zecora are two great concepts that could easily lead to more mayhem with natural magic or going to a new culture. Wish we had seen more done with them this episode. The gags were overdone this episode, and when they had Apple Bloom walk, it looked really awkward. However, there is one character who remained in character this episode. Spike stayed in character, staying to the side, providing comedy relief and attempting to help Twilight in whichever ways he could. He didn't even look through the book she said was rubbish, but instead used it to write down jokes, because if Twilight thinks it's rubbish, it's probably rubbish to Spike too. He does still maintain an open mind about curses, just like he did with Friends in the first episode, though. It's pretty bad, though, when the two side characters steal the maturity of the main cast, while also retaining their characters better. This has been Red Pen daring Poison Joke to try to make fun of me.